Hi, this is Tom Clark from the Department of Management at Xavier University with a narrated videotape of PowerPoint slides about business communication etiquette. Some words of wisdom from St. Paul are at the heart of good business etiquette. Be gracious to everyone you meet, because you never know when you're entertaining an angel. So at the end of this workshop, participants will have an understanding of the guidelines for establishing executive presence, such as good grooming and respectful language and nonverbal communication, and guidelines for simple communication etiquette for use in a variety of situations, including meetings, telephone use, and social media. So what is etiquette? Etiquette are the rules governing socially acceptable behavior and practices and forms that are prescribed by social convention. So in other words, in different situations, people in those situations have expectations. They have norms that they expect people who want to be accepted within that group to follow. Now there are two rules that can really underlie good etiquette. The first is the golden rule, to treat others the way that you would like to be treated. So if an prospective employer takes you to a restaurant, they may observe how you treat the servers in that restaurant. Would you treat them the way that you would want to be treated if your situation were reversed and you were the server and they were the customer? Or the platinum rule. You treat others the way that they would like to be treated. So I might observe, if you're back in my office, do you open a door for one of our oldest employees as a courtesy of that person, even if they're at a lower rank than you within the organization? So we look at the golden rule. Do you treat others the way that you would want to be treated? The platinum rule. Can you see things through the eyes of other people and to be responsive to their norms, so you're meeting their expectations for polite behavior in a situation? For example, were you to go out to dinner with a Muslim, although you may not approve they may not approve of eating pork, you may not eat pork at that meal because you think you wouldn't want to put your guests in front of food that they consider to be unclean. Even though you yourself have no issue with eating pork, you would not do so in that particular situation. Now, one of the most critical principles of effective business etiquette is to communicate for your audience and not for yourself. Very important that you communicate in terms of your objectives and not in terms of your feelings. The advice to be yourself is highly misleading. Very important to think about, what are the interpersonal and professional criteria for an interview? How should I dress? What kind of posture would make me look to be like a positive candidate? What kind of grooming should I have? So again, it's important to plan your behavior in terms of meeting both the interpersonal criteria, excellent eye contact, taking notes when the other person is speaking to show that what they're saying is important to you, professional criteria, being there on time, being positive and upbeat. So it's important to plan your behavior in terms of meeting both the interpersonal and professional criteria. Remember, you're in a competitive situation where you are being compared with every other person whom the employer is interviewing or your supervisor is interviewing for a position. It's important that you at least be equal to the best people who are applying for those positions. Now, mental rehearsal is the single most important factor that can distinguish you from other people who are communicating in a situation within a career. And this was developed by Charles Garfield, a psychologist actually in the 1970s of the American weightlifting team, the Olympic team. He wanted to apply some principles of psychology that worked with weightlifters to business executives, and he came up with some interesting findings. He found 6 things that separated the most successful people who rose in organizations from people who had equal credentials but didn't rise nearly as quickly. And the single most important of these was mental rehearsal. That is, before you go into a situation, visualizing, what am I going to say? What am I going to do? And then mentally rehearsing how you believe your audience would respond. So, for example, the first time that Procter & Gamble sent me to Toronto, my first trip away from home overnight, to teach writing skills there, when I came home, my wife said to me, "How was your trip?" Now here I'd been gone for 4 nights and 3 days. And she was expecting me to act like a good husband was and inquire about her life, how she was managing children on her own, something we normally did as a team. And instead I said, they rolled out the red carpet for me. They met me at the airport, took me to 3- and 4-star restaurants. It was really quite an interview as well as a training. And she looked at me and said, "We had hot dogs." And at that point I realized that I said exactly the wrong thing. That I should have thought, what would the ideal husband be doing in this situation? How close can I come to what the ideal husband, who was thinking about his wife's feelings and his wife's experience, would raise that first upon initially returning home? I've since learned, say to my wife, hire a babysitter, so when we come home we can have dinner together, we can share our lives, what's happened in the intervening time. And also that's what airport gift shops are for, so you can show appreciation at the last minute by picking up something for your wife or your children. In my situation, that would show that you were thinking about them before you returned home. Well, perception equals reality in people's minds, and there's 2 ways that we make perception. We have initial perception, that is people's first impressions. These are crucially important, and first impressions often last an extremely long time, up to 9 weeks. So it's critical to pay attention to them. And also sustained perception. That is the impression we make over time. So any positive initial perceptions we make, can we continue to make those positive impressions over time? And can we erase any negative impressions we made by becoming aware of them and then taking steps to correct the impression we made initially that may have put us in the doghouse or may have undermined our credibility on certain issues? So let's talk about presence. Emerson said, "Who you are speaks so loudly I do not hear what you say." And people often begin to evaluate us before any words are spoken. So if you're applying for a job, what did I think of your letter of application? What did I think of your interview? What did I think of your tone of voice when I first spoke to you on the phone? What did I think of the email? What did a secretary tell me about you before I've ever spoken to you in the first place? Let me give you an example in my own case. I had the opportunity of a lifetime to interview to teach writing skills at Procter & Gamble in 1982. And my mentor there simply said to me, when you come down for the interview, you're competing with a number of other companies, simply be yourself. Big mistake. I went to the interview in a brown corduroy suit, brown shirt, brown tie, brown shoes, brown socks, and brown belt, college professor's outfit, and everyone I met was in a blue pinstripe, white shirt, red tie, matching highly polished black shoes and black belt and black socks. I said to my wife when I came back, I looked like an alien, and I was not hired. Why would you hire someone who didn't even know what the dress code was for the company that they asked to hire them to teach one of their most important skills, the ability to write the famous Procter & Gamble one-page memo? Then beyond dress, grooming. How many of you have been in a room with somebody with an extremely strong perfume or cologne and thought, I don't want to be around this person? That can be turning people off. How about if you see somebody that has unclean, untrimmed fingernails? Does their lack of personal attention suggest that they would not have good attention on the job? How about the person that dresses sexually, has very big jewelry on and lots of jewelry that suggests sexuality, that may suggest self-centeredness, over-attention to personal appearance, a person that has tattoos that are showing versus someone that conceals small tattoos, someone who removes any visible body jewelry to appear to be conventional versus a person with a lot of visible body jewelry that again suggests that they're focused on themselves instead of on the job. Has someone taken time to comb their hair just before they've come in for the interview so they look their best? Are their shoes polished to show they take care from head to foot? Are stockings new, and are the belts on pants going to match the socks and match the shoes, and will the shoes look good, look new? I think it was important to the person. And then handshakes. How critical these can be. How many of you have shaken hands with somebody that appears to have no energies? They just grab the beginning of your fingertips, barely move your arm. And you think this person doesn't have the energy to do the job. Or how about the person that puts you into a masculinity contest and squeezes your hand to show you who has the upper hand? Who wants to hire that person? Who wants that person squeezing the hands of people you've recommended for the job? Or how about the pumper, the person that pumps your hand? Or the minister's handshake, the person that takes both hands in your hands? And very often this can feel condescending. What we want is eye contact, a smile, a brief handshake with eye contact lasting a bit longer than the handshake to show the other person is important to you. But handshakes matter, as we all know. They're one of the most important ways that we communicate a first impression. Let's talk about body language when you're handshaking. Are you smiling? Have people like people who like them? Do your eyebrows go up as a way of showing the other person it's important? Do you keep your chin relatively level? Raising your chin may suggest you're looking down on the other person. Do you angle your body toward the other person, avoiding a full frontal posture, which may be uncomfortable? Are your arms extended, your hands open? And have you avoided compressing your lips or your eyebrows, or making a fist, or having folded arms? All of which suggests some kind of opposition to the person you're talking to, or resistance. So body language, one of the easiest things to fix, one of the things we should be quite conscious of. And then listening. St. James tells us that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, that we should use them in that proportion. So let's think about listening skills. We can't see ourselves when we're listening to other people, but we can judge the way we're coming across to other people by thinking about what has happened when people are listening to us. So let's answer 3 questions here. How do you know someone's listening to you? They may have eye communication. They may be looking at you 60-70% of the time, giving you their undivided attention. They may encourage you. That's interesting. What else happened? They may have nonverbal positives like nodding, or they may write something down. The second question is, how do you feel when you know someone's listening to you? So how do you make others feel when they realize you're listening to them? Do you make them feel respected, valued, confident, liked? Is that the impact you want to have on people, so that they feel that way when they're around you? And how do you describe a person who is listening to you? Attribution theory. Do you describe them as courteous, attentive, empathetic, respectful? Are these words you'd like people to say about you? Because reputation matters. And what third parties hear about you often form a first impression before they meet you in person. Now let's look at the opposite question. How do you know someone is ignoring you? Maybe they're not looking at you. Maybe they're looking at their watch or their phone or over your shoulder. All of us have had a situation where we smiled, said an enthusiastic hello to someone, and all we get back are signs of indifference. And how does this make us feel? Nervous, insignificant, unintelligent. What's the matter with me? But how do we get back at that person? How do we describe the person who has ignored us? That person's rude, he's arrogant, he's distant, he's a jackass. And we might suggest those things to third parties that may form their impression of that person. So again, consciously listening in a positive fashion to people with eye contact and nonverbal positives and taking notes. Very important to building a positive reputation for excellent business etiquette. So what are some of the keys to effective listening? Not judging other people, seeking out their thoughts on neutral topics. What classes are you taking this semester? What challenges are you facing in those classes? If you traveled anywhere lately, do you want to tell me about that? What did you like? What would you suggest for somebody taking a similar trip? Not interrupting people, not correcting people, not making judgments. And if you do disagree, being diplomatic and seeking understanding. That's interesting. Help me understand how you came to that conclusion. Again, it's a focus on the person, showing an interest in their explanations and their experiences and their conclusions. Now, it's also important when we speak, how are we coming across to others? And a lot of us, when we ask questions, have our voice going up. What time is the meeting? I don't know. Help me. What happens when we say that the opposite way? When we ask a question and our voice goes down. What time is the meeting? I know. I'm checking to see if you know. So it's important to be listening to yourself, observing your nonverbal behavior, observing your verbal behavior. And then thinking about How am I coming across to other people? Am I being seen as pleasant, agreeable? Do I offer compliments to interviewers and their companies? Because if I do, I'll be viewed as a better fit to a prospective job, and I'll be hired at a higher rate, according to research at Auburn University, than applicants who fail to do this and focused more on their credentials for the job, which is also important to do. It's also important to sell yourself. But first impressions, critical. Ongoing impressions during the interview, critical. And let's talk about the power of positive attitude. To look at ourselves first. If we don't get a positive response from people, is it because of something we've said? Have we been provocative? Have we said something that would upset us if we were in the same situation? And as the slide said, listen to positive people and ignore negative ones. People that doubt, judge, or disrespect you are not worth your time and attention. And people who share your objectives for yourself, people who support you in your efforts to improve yourself, people who have achieved what you want to achieve and want to help you achieve the same thing. Those are the people who want to communicate in positive terms to help you visualize what the potentials for your future are and help you understand the steps you need to get there. So as Lincoln said, people are about as happy as they make up their minds to be. We have a choice every day whether to be positive or to be negative. And we're talking to other people. We have a choice to be positive about companies we have worked for. We have a choice to be positive about the work that we've done. Never say we were bored by it. Always say that we understood the positive impact it was having in the company, appreciated the pay we got for it. Never criticize a boss because somebody may be hiring you because previous people have had difficulty working with a boss, and you just may be the person that is able to communicate effectively with this person and be productive. Be positive toward peers and coworkers, because the interviewer is trying to see if you're going to be positive toward the peers and coworkers in your new environment. Be positive toward customers. They pay your salary. Be positive toward suppliers. Those are people who are critical partners in a business. And always, always be positive about yourself. Now, one of the most important rules that I have learned in interacting with people, and I wish I had learned it earlier, was saying to myself when I interact with somebody, what would the other person want to hear me say first? Can I put myself in the shoes of the other person and say, what would the best person be saying in this situation? What would the most sensitive person be saying in this situation? So asking myself that question allows me to say something that will show I see things from the other person's point of view. I understand what their experience is coming into the situation. And it's important to be focusing on them and being responsive to them. So a compliment followed by a question that allows a person to say something positive about themselves. Go into an office, meet somebody for the first time, see they have a sales award, say, wow, I see you got a sales award. Do you want to tell me about that? Of course they do. It makes them feel positive about you. It allows them to speak positively about themselves, about something of which they have a great deal of pride, and that's why they have that plaque on the board. Now, do you think about introducing yourself to administrator? Something like, hi, my name is Libby Smith. I'm here for the 1 o'clock appointment with Mr. Jones. Being very polite, being very respectful. Key fact, 90% of managers ask their administrators opinions of job applicants because they value those persons' perspectives. They're valued employees in their employ. And it's important to them that anybody they hire get the approval of people within their work team. Icebreakers, as we said before, when visiting an office, pay attention to how the office is decorated. Look for clues that allow you to compliment the other person. Give an example. You see a picture of a young woman in a soccer uniform with a trophy next to it and a young soccer player on top. Is there a story behind that trophy and the young woman in the soccer uniform? Sure. Megan's on a select soccer league. She was one of the top players on her team, and they won the championship. And we're looking forward to her performance on another select soccer team this season. On the other hand, avoid things that might be controversial until you know the person very well. Things like politics, religion, which often be highly sensitive topics, earnings, and any kind of negative communication or gossip about a company or people who work for a company. Ingratiation, extremely important. Complimenting others orally and writing on something that's important to them, to make them know that the interaction you have with them is important, that you recognize them for what their talents are. So for an example of written praise, I'm writing to express my appreciation for the expertise you shared with me yesterday with the skills I need to develop to excel as a marketing professional. I value your insight and will implement all your excellent suggestions. So notice what we have here. We have both an expression of appreciation in an interpersonal sense, an expression of appreciation for content, and an expression of reliability that you're taking the person so seriously, you're going to follow up on the commitments in terms of implementing the plan that they suggested for you. And this applies to interpersonal relationships outside of business as well. If you were going on a date with someone, especially for the first time, what would you say to your date to make them look forward to spending time with you? Would you say something? You look terrific. I've planned a wonderful evening for us. I'm really looking forward to spending time with you tonight. Something along those lines. In order to make the other person know that it was important, that you took time to think about how the evening would progress, that you recognize the time and effort they put into making themselves look their best. Now, a couple of other things that are important. In the United States, business executives indicate in surveys that they value integrity more than any other value. So it's very important when you communicate to people that you tell the truth. Because if you mislead them, they will never believe you again, and probably anybody they tell about it will never believe you again either. And then being reliable, doing what you say you will do. So that when somebody expects you to do something like write them a thank you note or expects you to look at the website that you committed to looking at and evaluate, that you go ahead and do that. Because very often they think that's the return on my investment. That's the return on my investment of helping this person, that they'll reliably follow through, that they'll say positive things about me to other people to make me feel positive about myself. Now, one of the things that's important in business etiquette is remembering names. I suggest getting business cards from everyone you meet and making notes on it about when you met, what you had in common, details about the person, names of children, colleges, hometowns. So when you call them the next time, you have something to start with. You have some small talk to start with, something you have in common before you get to your purpose. You can buy a scanner that scans business cards, puts the information automatically into a database. When you're communicating with somebody, especially until they tell you otherwise, start with the formal, not the informal. Call a professor by the name of doctor, medical professional by doctor, and so on. Older people often prefer to be Mr. or Mrs. before you use a first name. Be careful of insulting somebody who remembers your name by saying, I've forgotten your name. Say, help me out, your name is on the tip of my tongue and now it eludes me, to suggest it was simply something that happened episodically. It wasn't something that suggests the person isn't important to you. It's also important to write thank you letters to express thanks, to promote your objectives. In the opening, express appreciation, compliment the receiver. In the body, summarize what you see as a mutual benefit of the meeting. And in the closing, indicate steps you're going to be taking to take advantage of what you've learned in that meeting. You might add a PS to make a positive comment or offer to return the favor, as research shows that people read PSs quite carefully. In terms of invitations, reply to all invitations within 48 hours. And be gracious if you need to refuse. For example, thank you for inviting me to breakfast to hear Frank Jones of your legal department speak next Friday. Given his outstanding reputation, I'm confident I have much to learn from him. As I have another meeting scheduled for that time, I will be unable to attend. I appreciate your kindness and look forward to speaking with you in the near future. It will be a very nice email to write, where you start with a positive comment, your second sentence shows appreciation for the opportunity, your last sentence is positive going forward, and only your third sentence in the middle of the email indicates a negative that you'll be unable to attend. But look how much more polite this is than starting with you being unable to attend. Now, the last thing we'll talk about in part one of this business etiquette workshop is putting your best Facebook forward. What happens when a recruiter Googles you? What do you see about you, and what do they think when they see who your friends are and what they see about them? What will be revealed about you on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn? So what are your social media protection steps? Google yourself and any link with your name attached to it. Clean up your own account. Remove or detag unflattering photos or text. You don't want somebody seeing you doing underage drinking or smoking pot or involved in any kind of unwanted sexual advances. Be careful of inappropriate wall posts and links, including those with obscene language. Just think about people looking at a website, what they might find offensive, and be careful about what you leave up that might offend another person. And use your privacy settings so you can control who will see your profile. On the other hand, you can use Facebook much as you use LinkedIn to advance your interest. Make your profiles an extension of your resume. Write positive things about yourself in the interest and activity sections. Demonstrate your passion for the career field of your choice and post pictures of yourself performing a job of relevant action and service to show you have a heart for others. Here, for example, is a set of PowerPoint slides that one of my students has posted of themselves that I think was a very nice way of advancing himself. It shows him in terms of being able to work by building a fire pit. It shows that he's had work in which he's used Excel, that he communicates well in tutoring others, has a heart for others, that he has greeting skills, that he's worked as a team manager. We see he's been a successful student, that he's also been a successful in a marketing competition, successful athlete, and that he has done a number of things both at school in terms of being a Division I athlete, showing his competitive nature, and also has had a heart for others where he's worked in order to help the disadvantaged be more successful in their lives.